Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk to you about the book Die with Zero. There are 3 books that completely changed my perspective on life, wealth creation, and happiness over the last year. One was Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. I've already done a video on that. Link it up in the description below. 2 was called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. Working on a video on that. If it's out by the time this comes out, it'll be in the description below. And third, what I want to talk to you about today is this book called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. This book completely changed the way that I think about how I'm spending my time and how I'm spending, more importantly, my money. The chapters timestamped up below so you can kind of dip and dabble if that suits your fancy. But if not, stick around and let's jump into it. During your life, certain activities mean more or mean less. So that means there is a right time to do certain things in your life. That means there's a right time to have kids, there's a right time to go jet skiing, there's a right time to go backpacking across Europe. All of these different experiences, if you want to have as full of a life as you can, it's important that we put these experiences into certain age buckets. What Bill Perkins is arguing is that there actually is a right time to do these different activities. The reason that this exists is because your taste changes over time. So first of all, it was backpacking in Europe. He talked about how he had a friend that went in his 20s, he stayed in youth hostels and just kind of roughed it and had a blast. And then Perkins didn't go until his 30s, because by the time in your 30s, 40s, 50s, your tastes change over time. So the experience of backpacking across Europe when you're in your early 20s is very different than when you're in your early 30s or 40s. When I was in my mid to late 20s and I started staying in hostels, you're kind of down to rough it a little bit. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm not as down for that. Like, I'm a little more bougie. I want to have a room that's mine. You know, I want my place to myself. I might upgrade. I want something a little bit nicer. And so your tastes change. I'm not saying you can't go backpacking across Europe when you're in your 30s. It's just going to be a different experience. And the same goes for having kids. You have kids too early, it might limit you with some experiences that you might have wanted to have. It might be easier to have had when you were single. You have kids too late, you might not be able to play with them the same. It might be a different dynamic. And so what he's saying is that there are certain buckets, certain time periods of your life to have certain peak experiences. When it comes to the time and these different time buckets that you're going to be placing these experiences in, another piece isn't just your taste, but it's your physical abilities too. Because something like backpacking, hiking, skiing, wakeboarding, all of these are much easier if you're still able-bodied. When you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, that type of adventure, but it'll be a completely different type of experience than if you're down to get dirty and fall into the water, your joints don't hurt as bad, right? You can get more out of the experiences, those experiences when you're younger. At the same time, when you're older, there are certain experiences that might be more beneficial because at that point in your life, at that age, you have the experience and you have the knowledge and the appreciation for things to do those type of activities better. So thinking about what type of activities you want to do while you still have the physical capabilities to do so, I thought was really important. Money's relationship to your time. And I'm not saying that in terms of you spending your time making the money, although that is very important. We'll get to that later. But that money means different things at different points in your life. What Perkins argues is that 20 grand when you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, there could still be a lot of money, but it might not be life-changing money. In terms of your overall net worth, 20 grand, you might remodel your kitchen, you might spend that and pave your driveway, you might go on a nice family vacation. All of these are amazing things. But if you're 20 years old and you get 20 grand, that could be potentially life-changing money. And so he talks about this in terms of when he's gifting people money or when he's talking to people about receiving different types of money, that money is weighted differently depending on where you're at in your life. That same 20 grand that you get when you're 20 years old, you might be able to go backpacking for a year off that money. You might invest that, start your first business that might take off into something. That gives you so much more leverage because 1, your earning potential is much lower at that age. And 2, it's such a bigger piece of your net worth. If you want to give somebody money, what he argues is rather than waiting until you have more money to give them whatever that amount is now, even though it's a lesser amount, because that money is time bound, it could potentially do more for them over the long run rather than waiting to try to accumulate more and then giving that to them later, which I just thought was a super cool idea. Along the same point, what Perkins argues is that your earning potential will grow as you grow as well. So that your earning potential doesn't stay the same, hopefully, throughout your life. So as you grow money, you'll accumulate more and it'll start to mean different things. as you grow, as your time starts to decrease, as your health decreases, your time becomes more valuable. So that means that your money then may become less valuable because you're unable to use it for the same types of things. So that's sort of just an interesting dichotomy, that interplay between money and time, that money is really meant to be a tool to make the most out of your life. It's not something that you should spend all of your time just trying to generate, just to have, or just to save. I thought this was super cool. Memory dividend. Experiences are potent, not just because of when we're having them, but the happiness that we derive from the experiences later when we're thinking back on it. So for example, if you go on a family vacation, yes, you have the fun time that you have during the vacation, but then you also have these memory dividends. This is the fun that you get, the joy that you get as you're remembering the experiences. These aren't necessarily things that you always get with items or things. What Perkins argues is that if your life is the sum of your experiences, we should invest more of our money into the experiences rather than trying to accumulate, hence the name Die with Zero, right? If you put Coke and Pepsi next to each other, Pepsi almost every time in a blind taste test, Pepsi will win over Coca-Cola, which is fascinating. People say Pepsi tastes better just when they don't know what brand it is. But if you were to tell people this is Coke and this is Pepsi, Coke dominates Pepsi. Why? Because when we're drinking a Coca-Cola, we aren't just drinking the beverage. We're thinking about the little polar bear tchotchkes. We're thinking about all the memories that we had when we were drinking Coke out of a bottle, out of a can, Coke Zero, Diet Coke, all these different pieces of your life and your experience that are wrapped up in that brand that brings us a certain amount of happiness. And so I thought that was just a fascinating idea, because I realized there are different experiences for me. I'm still getting those memory dividends from years later. A lot of those experiences, I'm still getting joy from those to this day. Okay, so to wrap this up with a little bow on top, pretty much what I'm trying to say is think about how you're spending your time and think about what you want to spend your money. Just to recap, 1, when you're spending your time doing the things that you want to do, put those into certain age buckets of decades when you're going to do the things that you want to do. Number 2, money changes its significance over time because you have a bigger earning potential as well as where you are in your life. Hopefully you have accumulated more money or resources, so the time means different things at different points in your life. Number 3, memory dividends. Invest into experiences, not things, because you will be able to continue to get happiness from things over time, thinking back on it when you remember them. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, smash the buttons, leave a comment below. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and I'll check you on the next one. It's your money or your life, people. What are you gonna do with it? Peace.